Lively versus Baldoni. The narcissist uses #MeToo. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. I've explained elsewhere, in detailed analyses of Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, that they are both narcissists, and therefore that allows us to understand more about their behaviour as we look at it through the prism of their narcissism. The dispute between Lively, Reynolds, and what are known as the Wayfarer parties, basically Baldoni's gang, has been scheduled for trial in March 2026. And if it gets that far, it will certainly provide me with a fascinating opportunity to dissect the activity in the courtroom with regard to the narcissism of two of the participants. Matters have quietened down a little recently, and we'd seen Lively behaving like she didn't give a toss about Baldoni and the impact upon him as she was swanning around on the red carpet, as I analysed in a recent video. The presence of Baldoni's lawsuits naturally threatens Reynolds and Lively's need for control. Lawsuits are interesting things when it comes to narcissists. Many narcissists utilise the law as a means of asserting control to draw fuel and to get to residual benefits. Wealthy narcissists engage in lawfare, essentially utilising litigation to grind their opponent into the dust, not because they've got a particularly good claim against that individual, but because they have the economic firepower to exhaust the ability of the other person to participate in the proceedings, resulting in them compromising them invariably on less favourable terms for them as against the narcissist. The narcissist throws their weight around through the use of litigation, enabling them to assert control and nullify threats to control by suing people, seeking injunctions, bringing defamation claims, and so forth. Less well-off narcissists also utilise litigation by acting in person. Invariably attracting the mantle of a vexatious litigant, this individual engages in tying up the court process, monopolising its time, and becoming very tedious as they bring application after application after application. Their narcissism tells them that they understand the law better than anybody else, and that's why they can act in person. Of course, it's more about the fact that they can't actually afford to hire a lawyer, or that nobody will continue to act for them, having worked out that they're too much like hard work. These individuals, just like the wealthy narcissists, use the court process to nullify threats to control and try and assert control over individuals. And the fact is that many of the cases that continue through the courts and go to trial are actually, as I've explained in separate videos, being perpetuated by narcissists. Most people who are not narcissists will resolve a dispute without going anywhere near lawyers or even before the issue of court proceedings, because they don't have that need for control in the way that a narcissist does. However, if you find yourself in a situation where you have a narcissist as an opponent, it becomes much harder to bring those proceedings to a conclusion because of the narcissist's inherent need for control. This is problematic for the non-narcissist who is a party to that litigation. When you have two non-narcissists who have a dispute, they are invariably focused on resolving it. They have overlapping interests and therefore can reach compromise more readily. With the narcissist needs control in addition to the other factors, and the non-narcissist invariably doesn't realise that they're dealing with a narcissist and therefore cannot understand why the narcissist is rejecting very sensible settlement proposals or is demanding too much, and it is linked to the issue of control. I have helped lots of people through consultation navigate their way through court proceedings where they're dealing with a narcissist. I've assisted them with the accumulation of evidence, how they should approach negotiations, how they should approach trial, how they should deal with the narcissist throughout, so that they can bring it to a conclusion as quickly as possible and avoid the worst of the narcissist's behaviour. So many people find themselves in litigation with narcissists that they're not aware are narcissists, and it becomes a soul-destroying process. Here we have Blake Lively, a narcissist who is using the law to try and control Justin Baldoni. Baldoni, of course, has brought his own lawsuit, which amounts to a huge threat to control for Blake Lively. The presence of a lawsuit against a narcissist, whether you're suing them for defamation, suing them for money that they owe you, suing them to stop them from harassing you, whatever it might be, constitutes a huge threat to the narcissist's control. The narcissist, of course, lacking accountability, cannot accept that they've done anything wrong. Their narcissism tells them they're the victim, that your lawsuit is entirely vexatious, that it's brought on grounds which have no foundation, that you're an unpleasant and horrible individual for doing this, that they can't understand why you can't just talk about it. They are blinded by their narcissism to their behaviours which has caused the problem in the first place, and don't see that they have anything to apologise for or to settle. Thus, where you bring legal proceedings against a narcissist, the narcissist perceives this as a huge threat to control subconsciously and therefore seeks to nullify it. And this is the case with Blake Lively. As reported in Variety, Blake Lively filed a motion at the back end of last week to throw out Justin Baldoni's $400 million defamation suit against her, because it represents a huge threat to control in terms of the lawsuit itself and a huge threat to control with regard to the amount of money that he's seeking. She argues that his suit is retaliation for lodging a sexual harassment claim. In the motion, Lively's attorneys invoked a California law that protects sexual harassment accusers. Governor Gavin Newsom signed the law in 2023 in response to a wave of defamation suits against women who spoke up during the #MeToo movement. Lively's attorneys say the law entitles her to claim attorney's fees and damages from Baldoni once his suit is thrown out. In other words, in an epic self-own, the Wayfarer parties have created more liability for themselves by their malicious efforts to sue Ms. Lively into oblivion, the motion states. Lively has sued Baldoni, his publicists, and the producers behind It Ends With Us, alleging that they launched a smear campaign against her after she complained about sexual harassment on set. Baldoni then sued her and her husband Ryan Reynolds, arguing that they sought to destroy his career with false allegations. Reynolds filed his own motion to dismiss, saying that Baldoni's claims amount to little more than hurt feelings. Shows, of course, belittlement of Baldoni and a dismissiveness of his situation, and that Reynolds was within his rights to call Baldoni a sexual predator. Lively's attorneys said in a statement that Baldoni's defamation suit is an abuse of the legal process. The painful reality is that Miss Lively is not alone in being sued for defamation after speaking up about being sexually harassed at work, a Lively spokesperson added. While Miss Lively has suffered greatly by speaking up and pursuing legal claims, it is important for other people to know that they have protections and that there is a specific law that expressly protects them from being silenced or financially ruined by a defamation lawsuit because they have the courage to speak up. Now, as we have seen, Blake Lively's allegations of sexual harassment don't really appear to sit with the evidence that has been produced so far. In actual fact, the #MeToo law was there to protect individuals where they were in a weaker position. For people where they, first of all, had genuinely suffered sexual harassment, and that's questionable with regard to Blake Lively, but secondly, to protect those people from then facing massive lawsuits brought by powerful and wealthy opponents, so that they can't take the risk of seeing that litigation through, so that they withdraw their original complaint of sexual harassment. That's what it's designed to protect. It isn't designed to protect people who have spurious claims of sexual harassment, which certainly seems to be the case in relation to Blake Lively, who is a powerful woman with a powerful husband who are both wealthy. That isn't what the law's designed to do. But that doesn't matter to Blake Lively, does it? Because remember, as a narcissist, she sees herself as the victim. Baldoni has sexually harassed her in her eyes. That means she was entitled to bring a claim. When Baldoni defends himself and then claims that she and her husband have effectively conspired together, which much of the evidence disclosed so far appears to support that proposition, that is a huge threat to control to Lively and Reynolds. So their response is to file a motion to dismiss Baldoni's claim. Lively relying upon a Me Too law, which isn't really applicable to her, but that doesn't matter. Her sense of entitlement is such that she will utilise it. The delusion of her narcissism is such that she believes it does apply to her. So she utilises this aspect of law to then try and buzzkill Baldoni's claim, thus nullifying that threat to control by having his claim dismissed, which then leaves her claim against him without any form of threat by a counterclaim. As I explained, the evidence doesn't show that she was necessarily sexually harassed, but her narcissism tells her that she was, hence why she brings the claim. Not only does Baldoni defend that claim, but then he strikes back with his own claim, which threatens Lively's need for control, and therefore her narcissism behooves her to try and nullify it, and it does so by the utilisation of a law which isn't exactly designed for the likes of her, but could be said to be applicable to her, and therefore her narcissism says, use it. If that's going to get that threat to control nullified, let's use it, let's file that motion, let's throw out Baldoni's suit. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.